feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Saturday afternoon. It's October 18th, and this episode is our annual WolvesFest episode out at Falling Knife Brewing Company. I am recording this part here quickly before I head over to Falling Knife, so I'm not sure exactly what all we will be getting into for this episode, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm just thinking of you listening at home right now. I'm being like, okay, it's a live episode. What all are they getting into? I don't know exactly. What I do know is that I will be joined by Kyle Theige and Britt Robson, and I do know that we will take a lot of live questions from people in the audience. So that'll kind of be the vibe for this episode. I really am looking forward to this one. The vibes are always high at WolvesFest, and it's also very, very cool to see the Wolves community that Falling Knife has sort of cultivated over the years there. And yeah, we're gonna have some fun with it. I do want to let you know before we get started, so we don't have to take a break, that this episode is brought to you by another business we have been working with for many, many years, and that is Prize Picks. You might be listening to this on Sunday morning. If you are, try making a Prize Picks lineup for the Sunday slate of NFL games. I was looking at it. How about this lineup? Devontae Adams does score a TD this week because Puka Nacua is out, and Breece Hall does not score a TD this week because he is on the Jets. If you make that your lineup and both of those hit, you will receive 3-1 on your lineup. I also want to remind you to submit your season-long NBA Prize Picks lineups before the season starts on Tuesday night. You know, more or less points per game, rebounds per game, assists per game, whatever season-long averages for Wolves players or players around the NBA, sort of like Ant, more or less than 27.8 points per game is his number. You know, kind of think about that number. What do you think about that number? Is he going to be a 28 plus points per game guy? If so, obviously take more than on that. But it's a fun thing to look at and to sort of track over the course of the NBA season. There's always something going on over at Prize Picks. As a reminder, to put together a lineup at Prize Picks, all you need to do is put 2 or more picks in your lineup to win. If you don't yet have a Prize Picks account, all you have to do is put in promo code DANE when you sign up, and you will receive $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. That's prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app using promo code DANE when you create your account. WolvesFest coming up next. Let's go. Hold on. Kyle's here. He went pee. All right, we are the Dane Moore NBA podcast. This is Kyle Theige. This is Britt Robson, and we are excited to be here. Thank you for all coming out to WolvesFest today. Like I said, Britt Robson, Kyle Theige. Kyle's taking a picture. Kyle, what are we doing here today?
We are celebrating the two-way contract for Johnny Juzang. Put your beers in the air for Johnny Juzang.
There we go. There we
go. We talked about this last night. First of all, again, we've done this for a couple of years. This is absolutely incredible. Thank you all for showing up and supporting Falling Knife and supporting us and everything we do. And we survived the preseason. So round of applause for everyone that watched some of those games and watched a lot of guys they didn't really know. But now that the preseason's done, this has kind of always been our season tip-off. Starts Wednesday in Portland on the road. But I think it's kind of a what did we learn from the preseason, kind of big picture, as well as what are you looking forward to? We know some of the questions, right. The point guard position, the rotation, all that stuff. But, like, what are you really looking forward to now that the real meal is coming up?
Yeah, so that's what we'll kind of do here for the next hour. Also, after we do a podcast, the Crunch Wears No Pants crew is going to be doing another one. Afterwards, they'll be here, and there's so many cool things like merchandise and stuff like that in the other room. And there's so many of you here. This is a really cool thing that Falling Knife has cultivated here. And, you know, we're at the games during the playoffs, but I know there's this many people for every single playoff game, which is really cool because when I met with Dan and the team who owns Falling Knife, like, this was their vision for this when they opened this brewery. They wanted to be a place that was a place that Wolves fans could congregate. And I think probably many of you have had the experience maybe like 10, 15 years ago of going to a bar in Minneapolis and asking if they can put the Wolves game on, and you were told no. I think that's very much changed, and this has kind of been a spot to for all the people who actually wanted to watch the games, turns out there was a lot of you, and those bars probably would have made a lot of money if they would have turned on the Wolves games. But yeah, we're going to talk, the three of us, a little bit. We have a fourth microphone. We like for these live events to be a lot of what you guys want to hear us talk about. So you can come up, ask a question. We'll just kind of hang out here for the next hour, but we should probably let Britt talk a little bit. So Britt, what have you learned about the Timberwolves this training camp, and what are you excited for on next week when the season begins?
Well, in terms of learning, I'm not sure we've learned a lot because there's a lot of intangibles that will decide the season, and they're the kind of intangibles that don't really get resolved in the preseason. I would say if there was one thing I would have to point to as something I've learned, it's that Terrence Shannon will be a regular rotation player, probably on a par with Dante DiVincenzo, if not Naz Reid. And I think that has ramifications for the 9th and 10th guys in terms of their minutes. And if you want to throw Berenger in there, the 11th man. So that is something we've learned, is that the top 8 in the rotation, once again, is pretty solid. And that creates some interesting dynamics. Shannon has proven to be the kind of defender and playmaker, at least in the preseason. Almost everything I'm going to say for the next hour is going to be with a caveat in the preseason because
the season hasn't started.
A year ago, right now, everybody was pissing and moaning on Nickeil Alexander-Walker because he said he was going to be a point guard and he couldn't play the point. And everybody thought Dante DiVincenzo, myself included, was the greatest thing in the world and was going to set the world on fire because of preseason. So that's both good and bad. You can get excited about things in the preseason and be disappointed. You can also be really questioning things about the preseason, like why can't Rudy Gobert still catch the ball or finish or something? And, unfortunately, there's about 5 years of evidence of that. So preseason may not be a difference there. But there are some things that'll be surprises that are positive surprises as well. What I'm excited about is that I think Julius Randle is happy, and I think that he is now a regular part of this team, and he seems to be playing the right way and looking for the right things. I'm happy that Anthony Edwards has been challenged by his teammates and his coach, which is something that was kind of a pretend thing before, where it was in that maturity place where you didn't know whether to challenge him or kind of give him a little leash and let him work the yayas out. I think now it's like, hey, you've been to 2 Western Conference Finals. You've been stripped in 5 games. What are you going to do about it? Because you're the superstar. You're going to start to play defense 70% of the time as an all-league player instead of 30% of the time. I'm excited to see whether or not that challenge is met by Ant and many other things, but we'll go later.
You go ahead.
So the preseason caveat is important, but also sometimes like making shots, whether it be the preseason or the regular season, is making shots. And to TJ, for example, if we start with him, we talked about the power ball, right? Like TJ can get to the rim. He can do all these things in transition, but can he make spot up threes? And in the preseason, I think he finished 10 for 15 from 3. Like that's a real number that translates and gives you hope that when he's out there, 66% for the mathematicians. Thank you, Nate. When he's out there with Julius and Ant and Rudy, he's not going to be able to always get to the rim. Like it's going to be clogged in the paint. So he's going to be finishing a lot of possessions rather than initiating things. And the fact that, again, albeit a couple games of meaningless basketball, he was hitting those threes, and you hear about all summer he's shooting thousands of shots in the gym. Like it's meaningless now, but I do think it gives you hope that, like, yeah, he probably is. If anyone's going to graduate to replace Nickeil as one of the 8 starters for this season, Terrence has shown you can do all that cool stuff. Plus the one thing they really need him to do, space the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I have the tendency in the preseason or we all do, to look at the smaller things, the players on the bench. How many times in the last month have we talked about replacing Nickeil Alexander-Walker? Is Rob Dillingham going to play? Jalen Clark, Terrence Shannon Jr.? And I'm not saying those aren't somewhat meaningful things, but every year to me at this time, the most important thing is what changed or didn't change in Ant, what, as it's going to, when he goes from being 21 to 22 to 23 to 24. And I think it's just going to be really interesting at 24 now of you're not really, really young anymore. You know, where did you make your steps forward here? Where did you develop physically? Where did you develop mentally here? And with the Wolves having gone to the conference finals 2 seasons in a row, it sets this really high, difficult bar to cross. And again, we can talk about these small things like the players that are going to matter during the regular season and determine wins and losses and if they're going to win 50 games or not. But if we talk about like the end goal of this team going to the championship, winning a championship, right, Britt? Like so much of that is tied to Ant and his how quick his development is. How at some point he's going to be in his prime. I'm really curious to going from 23 years old to 24 years old, how much closer he is to his prime this year. I think that's the biggest needle mover.
Well, everybody was really shocked when the Rudy Gobert trade happened like 2 months, 3 months after Tim Connelly was hired. And what Connelly said, and it's when I began to shift my opinion around that the minority owners who just trying to overexert themselves and bring somebody in for the sake of bringing somebody in, given Connelly's track record, the moment I really started to think that, hey, we actually have a general manager, Pobo, whatever you want to call it, that thinks 3 or 4 years ahead. He said, I made the trade so Anthony Edwards could get playoff experience at a very young age. And that was exactly what happened. Now, he moved earth, if not heaven, to get Gobert here with a lot of draft picks. And they don't have those anymore. A lot of treasure expended, a lot of starters. At the time, Vando, Pat Bev, 2 keys to the success of the season the year before. Now it is Ant's time, after 2 finals appearances, to live through that fact. He's got to emerge as a superstar. You know, he's been on the cusp. He's been called a superstar. And in terms of charisma and his high-end abilities, he is unquestionably a superstar. In terms of his ability to be regarded automatically as one of the 2 or 3 or 4 best players in the NBA, he's not there yet. What will that take? Well, some of it will take maturity, but Tim Connelly has fast-forwarded that maturity. A lot of people Ant's age don't get to play in the finals 2 years in a row, and by the way, occasionally play fantastic. In fact, often play fantastic, but also occasionally, get their hat handed to them. So it is Ant's time to take not a small step, but a large step. And it won't be in terms of making threes or finishing at the rim. It will be in terms of consistency of effort in ways that decide basketball games in February and therefore decide basketball games in May and hopefully June, because a team is winning consistently in February.
So, Kyle, what are the steps there? We've spent so much time talking about the mid-range. We've talked about, him having a more important defensive role. When you in your head envision, all right, Ant is an MVP candidate, what does that look like? Or wins MVP. What does that look different to you than a year ago or a couple of years ago with him? What has changed in it?
I just boil it back to, for everyone that's here, Anthony Edwards. I'm thinking about my guy Wendell over here, my friend Tyler. Anthony Edwards is kind of all of our kid that we all saw come in and he did the Popeyes chicken Zoom calls and stuff. And he's matured. And to Britt's point about all this stuff, everything ties to Ant. So it doesn't really matter what Terrence shot in the preseason. He could shoot 15 for 15. If Ant doesn't level up, and not only on the court with, what is his first shot going to be in Portland? Is it going to be a 3-point shot? Is it going to be in the post? Is he going to get to the rim? We don't really know. But I go back to that media day.
A pretty good idea.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a 16-footer. Yeah. But I go back to that media day where he was talking about all the other stuff that he's starting to come into his own. He's 24 years old, but he acts now like he's 34. He's kind of put all the earmuffs, Wendell. He's kind of put all the bullshit aside, and he's a leader. And at media day, he's I was mad that Naz Reid had a camp and I wasn't there. And that type of stuff, now basketball X's and O's, they can probably win 50 games. But what he took away from that OKC series and what he took away from that Dallas series 2 years ago, those teams hung out. and they were like close. And it wasn't just like, Jaden and Nas are besties. Like they were really tied together so that when they went through real battles, again, it just comes all the way back to like, can 5 lead them through some of these tough moments? And I think behind the scenes, you've talked to people, like he's been in the gym, he said all the right things. And now on Wednesday in Portland, it's like, he seems focused on that 20-1 odds. Like he seems ready to climb up that hill again of, can I have an MVP type season? And to win an MVP, it's going to be all about the team's record. You know what I mean? Like he's not going to win MVP going 50 or 48 and 44 or 34. So I'm just excited to see what he comes out, because he said all the right things. He's become, whether he wants to admit it or not, the face of the league. He's got one of the best shoes. He's all over commercials. He's talking to Matilda. Like he's kind of here. He's arrived. And if he can bring these guys with that have all worked on their games and are all ready to kind of go with him, I think that's what gives you hope, to Britt's point earlier in Chicago, where it's like, you can't just expect another Western Conference Finals appearance, right? Like that's going to be a mark, but also for them, like, can you break through that ceiling we've talked about all summer? Because there's a clear ceiling. Like they might be a Final Four team. They're not a Final 2 team. And it's going to take a lot of his play on the court, but also his leadership off it.
Did you know that Ant's favorite movie was Matilda, Britt? No, you didn't?
Can you give us your Matilda thoughts really quick?
No, I actually want to get into the fact that if Ant is the MVP this season, the Wolves are in the finals. I mean, that there isn't a way. I mean, you got SGA, you got Jokic, you got, all kinds of people. Whoever comes out of the East is going to have a legitimate candidate. There is a decided bias in terms of winning an MVP, and has a very stellar supporting cast. It isn't like he's going to carry a team. He is going to carry a team from 2-1 or 3-2, but he has a playoff team around him. So, and he has a history of success. So what they need is the kind of play that puts him alongside what SGA did last year, what Jokic has done for 4 years. And that is an extremely high level. And when we talk about leveling up, I mean, it's a casual statement, but that's a hell of a curve. But if Ant makes that curve, that's when he's MVP, and that's when the Wolves take that step.
All summer, they've talked about the C word, continuity. But for Ant, we were talking about MVP. Oh, we're doing a drinking contest? Last year, Ant was 12-1 odds to win MVP. This year, he's 20-1. So he's fallen back. But continuity, drink. The one for Ant to be an MVP.
Continuity.
To be an MVP, like what you're talking about with Shea and Jokic, is consistency. They do it every night. Right. They'll give you 32, 6, and 5 on a cold January against the Hornets. And I think that's when you talk about leveling up. For me, the leadership stuff means a lot too, because I geek out over that. But if he can, what did he say at Media Day? It's like, I'm going to shoot for scoring records in those games. Don't love that. I think it was kind of tongue in cheek, but I think it was him being like, I'm going to come ready to play in those games. And you've been as close to him as anyone. Like, he didn't always do that in the past.
No, I mean, it's been a sub theme, I mean, you could feel brave about criticizing Ant and know you were right. I mean, it's the guy doesn't play consistent off-ball defense, and he takes games off on Sunday afternoons and February against a bad team. That's been a fairly consistent pattern. The problem with that, even if you win those games or win those quarters or whatever, it doesn't generate the kind of momentum that you need. Think back 2 years ago to the way the Wolves played defense. They were a steamroller. And the way they were a steamroller was that almost everybody bought in. Ant wasn't as important to the defense at that particular time. And so it could be a steamroller with him playing the way he was playing. Now, lost Kyle Anderson, lost Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 2 sublime defenders who are in the middle of the rotation. And when you lose those guys, you need other people to step up on defense to be an ace defensive team. And the person you need to look for in that case is Anthony Edwards, among others. But Anthony Edwards, because he's one of those rare people that has a ceiling. I mean, Ty Lue, who was the assistant coach for the World Cup team, talks about Ant wanting to be the alpha on that World Cup team, and during practices dominating every player on that team and said, I think Anthony Edwards could be the best defender I've ever seen. I mean, he has Kawhi Leonard on his team.
Right.
So, it's there. Now, it's a lot to ask for, and that's why I said 70% instead of 100%, because there's a lot going on there. But he needs to play defense in a manner that when he's off ball, it isn't something that people can take advantage of for the back cut 2 points or that pull up because he isn't coming out, whatever. It's just a matter of consistency, as Kyle said, and it is a matter of Ant being engaged more than he has been in the past.
I think what puts you in a place as a star player to be consistent, the SGA, the Jokic thing that you're talking about there, is that your teammates are too. Like that you're getting the same thing from Rudy Gobert every night. You're getting the same thing from Julius Randle, Jaden McDaniels, Mike Conley down the line every night. And I think if Ant has like a bankability around him and he knows, then he can know what he needs to do to level up, like you said there. Thinking of the MVP last season, I feel like that's what Oklahoma City was, right? You kind of knew what you were getting night to night from Jalen Williams on down the line for that Thunder team. So Ant is the ceiling, right? Like obviously, and him getting to become an MVP type caliber player, that's how this team goes to the finals, does all those sort of things.
I don't think a ceiling with lousy walls.
Yeah, right.
It's good of a ceiling.
Exactly. And so I think probably at 24, to reach that ceiling, he needs sturdy walls. And a big, I just feel like we haven't really talked about like Rudy Gobert that much this whole preseason. And there's kind of this almost expectation that he will be the same thing that he was previously. And I could go both ways with that. He's 33. You can make the case of maybe he's not going to be the same player he was last year or a couple of seasons ago. I also think you can make the case that Rudy Gobert could have a better season. Last year, he was navigating a whole bunch of different, like a different roster, different things with that. And again, it's Ant is number one. Obviously, he's number one in the pecking order. But if you forget about what Julius Randle can do, and you forget about what Rudy Gobert can do, and all those guys down the line, then he can only take them so far as well. I don't want to put it all on Ant because I don't think that's what an MVP is in 2025 anymore. It might have been what it was in the 90s, the person who carried it. But he does need help along the way.
To be a champion in the NBA, you need to have a roster that is incredibly synergistic. However you define that, whether it is the 9th or 10th man, knowing exactly their role. What Finch has said throughout the preseason, and the players have echoed it, they've used the OKC unselfishness example. They need to go big. Okay, well, that means a few smalls at the bottom of the rotation, the Joes and the other guys are not going to get as many minutes. They want to go small. Well, that means Holmgren gets less minutes or somebody gets less minutes. They were fine with that. And so that's what they're
together. Yeah.
That's what they're talking about. That's what chemistry really is. That's what synergy really is. I'm not going to take back, and you didn't ask me to, but Ant still needs to be in the MVP conversation for this team to get beyond the conference finals, because I will tell you that is a tall task. You get through the Western Conference and then you deal with the East. The Western Conference is as brutal. I've covered the NBA for 35 years. Never any better depth. There's 11 legitimate playoff teams, I think, in that division, in that conference. So you need that, No,
I absolutely. I just did want to say we can start taking questions here. If you want to, if you do want to line up, I do think you need to come behind the speaker so it doesn't make one of those weird noises. I will do that, but you can jump in there too for the question.
No, I was just thinking when you said it's not all on Ant, I kind of disagree in the sense of a couple of years ago when Ant had vets like Kyle and Pat Bevan stuff, like they brought it pretty much 82 games a year. Like they brought it on that Sunday matinee, and he didn't. I think this year, like the dynamics of this team's chemistry and the continuity, like if he brings it on a Sunday at 2 p.m. in a matinee game, could you see any of his teammates not bringing it? Like does set the tone. And we've talked about how for this team to be a defensive menace, again, being a steamroller, like they kind of have to punch first. And that goes back to like, for him to win MVP, it's not going to be because he just gives you 34, 8, and 7. It's also going to be the defensive stuff. And again, he's probably not applying himself super hard on defense in the preseason, but game 1 in Portland against a defensive-minded team, if you see him lock up guys in those first couple possessions, you're going to know, like, okay, this is a little different. And he's, for better or worse, he's taking it a little more seriously than he ever has.
I'll co-sign that.
My point is Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert need to be really good this season too to win a bunch of regular season.
We haven't mentioned Naz Reid's name all preseason.
Yeah, him too. I bet you we'll get one of those.
Hey guys, thanks for doing this again. This is awesome what you've built. This is really cool. First, I just want to say I'm really happy that everybody's healthy through the preseason. I just make sure all the soft tissues stay intact. That would be great if we can do that all year long. You guys did an episode on hot takes recently, which I really enjoyed. I was curious if you had any hot takes for maybe the NBA landscape, maybe non-Wolves kind of stuff. And also, I'm a big basketball guy. I like to watch on League Pass a lot. Who are the kind of teams that you're going to be looking to watch on League Pass this year? What kind of interesting ones you got?
Dane's been offline for a couple of days hanging out with his family. So our hot takes, bold predictions episode, you're an idiot because you're too pessimistic, and I'm an idiot because I'm too optimistic. So we are so fucking back.
Yeah,
when it comes to that.
So normal.
Yeah, so normal.
Cool.
Give me a bold prediction, just kind of league wide of what you're expecting now. Great question.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would be in line with what Britt was saying. Is I'm just interested to see the West, right? The caliber of competition in the Western Conference. Because we all do the thing where we look at everybody's rosters and stuff like that and go, yep, a lot of good players on there. And Portland, who they play, I'm kind of excited to see Portland, for example, this season. They're probably not one of your 11 teams, right, Britt?
Right. But very close.
Use the microphone.
I mean, they're 11 and a half.
Yeah, 11. So, like, I am always of the mind that I got to see it. I want to see some of these teams, but I do enter the season, thinking that this Western Conference is crazy, especially when you put it up against the East, which is dealing with injury and those sort of things. So I don't know if it's hot. I think there's going to be a gigantic disparity between the East and the West this season, which is very relevant, to the Timberwolves. And yet there'll be a couple of good teams in the Eastern Conference, like the Cavs or whatever, who are going to be taking on a much easier track to the finals. And I think we've kind of ruled out that any of those teams could actually make it. Like Milwaukee, I think Milwaukee is going to actually be a lot better than people think it is. That would probably be my one.
I agree. I have a hot take. I think San Antonio may avoid the play-in.
Wow. Okay.
This is almost as hot as Kyle's. Julius Randle's going to lead the team in assists take. That was,
Julius Randle came very close to leading the team in assists last year.
No, Britt, he did.
I dare you to check out Reddit right now what people think about your aunt's going to score less points per game take. Anyway.
Yeah.
Victor Wembanyama is the real deal.
No, I'm with you on that. And they have a lot of young players. I think bigger picture. I mean, I always think about like this community again. Everyone's wearing blue and green, but I think there's a lot of people. We learned this through our Canis days and early, like people love basketball. And I was talking to Alec Lewis is here somewhere from The Athletic, who covers the Vikings. Like football is great because every game matters. I think this season in the NBA, like who's the worst team, right? Maybe the Wizards. They're probably going to be fun. Like in the West, like every night games are going to really matter. I mean, you have a team coming off locally, like back-to-back Western Conference Finals appearances, and in some people's minds, they brought everyone back but Nikhil, and they're like sixth. Or so like every night is going to matter. And back to the whole Ant conversation, it's like those teams, as much as you loved OKC, but as much as people didn't love the OKC thing last year, they brought it every night.
Right.
And I think no matter what night you tune in, if you can figure out the League Pass and the 900 streaming services, if you can find a game on Tuesday, it's probably going to be a really good basketball game.
Right.
And I think this is probably the most excited I've been for just an NBA season because every team but the Nets are going to be really good.
Let me take another question.
Victor will be top 5 in the MVP voting.
What's his last name?
Wembanyama.
So, building on the previous question, I have a hot take for you. At the end of the year, Jaden McDaniels will be in the running for Sixth Man of the Year, which means that Naz Reid becomes a starter at small forward, and Jaden McDaniels becomes a power forward.
How dare you?
All right, next question.
No, but that's actually opens up a quick thing. It's a good question of like, could you see? I thought you said something really smart at the United Center after the Bulls game about how last year they get Dante DiVincenzo. He's the prize of the cat trade, and he's going to chew up all of Nikhil's minutes. Then Nikhil went and had an $85 million season, right? Goes and gets paid. Could you see at some point this starting lineup? Everyone thinks like, oh, maybe Mike will get pulled out and someone get pulled in. Could you see another seismic change to what this starting lineup is at some point during the season?
Yes. I think it'll be injury driven, which is a huge caveat, of course, and nobody knows what the injuries will be. But I do think if Shannon gets to be 7th or 6th in the rotation, that will be significant in terms of his contribution. I think he will perform well in whatever minutes he gets. So the minutes that rise will improve his stature.
Isn't it kind of problematic if Terrence Shannon Jr. is the 6th or 7th best player on the team?
I didn't say 6th or 7th best player. I said 6th or 7th in minutes.
Okay.
So
it'd be an injury. Oh, yeah, you did say that.
So,
okay.
But I also think that if he gets that opportunity, he will prove that he's in the running to be, you could argue, okay, is it him or Dante? Is it him or Nas? Or is it him or Jaden, to his point? I kind of like the idea of Jaden McDaniels as a 6th man, quite frankly, not because it is, a promotion thing. It is a team thing. Jaden McDaniels, and if anybody has noticed, he's not on the ball against the best. He's not a wing stopper in preseason, at least. That's a huge shift. And the reason I think, who knows with Finch, but I think it might be that he wants to see what he's like with some power forward minutes. He wants to see what he's like off the ball in terms of his defense and rotation. He is one of the most versatile players on the team, and I think that versatility has been relatively untapped, and I think it will remain untapped as long as he's with the starters. As long as he has Julius and Ant and Rudy on the court, a lot of the things he does well that are not wing stopper things don't get used. So I wouldn't mind, quite frankly, that kind of quirky move, but I do think it will be injury driven because I do think Chris Finch isn't, what people want to say things about rotation and let's do this. People need to remember that this has been an incredibly harmonious locker room for, almost the entire time Finch has been here, despite enormous turnover. And that's because people get roles, they stay in roles, he sticks to his guns, and everybody at least knows where they stand. And if you've ever been an athlete on a team, it doesn't have to be NBA level. If everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing and they're doing it relatively well, that's a pretty good locker room.
I do think Finch, just overall, right, is a big X factor in this because it's a weird puzzle to solve, right? Like we could all come up with a different path forward here, right? And making fun of that a little bit, but it's not ridiculous. Like that could work too, right? It's because they do have all this depth. And the reason we're talking about the rotation being complicated is because they have 7 starter caliber players on the team. So in ways, it's like an embarrassment of riches, but it leads to a very complicated setup if you are the head coach, which I'm sure will be met with very reasonable takes over the course of the season. Your turn.
Hey, great to talk to you boys. This is a awesome show. Long-time listener, first-time caller. There you go. So I'm glad we're talking about Jaden because that's what my question pertains to. Closer. So I have this theory that anytime Jaden scores 15 or more points, we win 90% of those games.
Are you Chris Finch?
So my question is,
or Kyle,
over under 15 points per game average for Jaden McDaniels this year.
You want to go? I don't know what he averaged last year.
What did he average last year?
It's like 13 something.
13 is the word.
So we've talked about the transition a lot, right? Because that's kind of been the emphasis for this team this year. Although, in addition to getting back to playing high-level defense, great question. If Jaden McDaniels were to average 15 points a game, it's got to be just a lot of like the low-hanging fruit of the transition, like getting out, getting a couple easy buckets. He's just never going to be. You're watching the offense again against the Bulls. They're just never going to run a ton of plays for him. He seems, I don't know what you think, he seems a little more empowered. He's taken a couple more step back threes. He's taken a couple more shots. They're like, oh, I'm going to shoot this one rather than defer. But to average 15, it would have to be, to your point about pace, the pace would just have to increase the volume of shots for this team because, again, like they do have a good, thing working with Ant and Julius and some of the other guys. So 15 points a game doesn't sound like a lot, but that's over. I mean, he played 82 games last year. Like that's a lot of opportunities that he would have to find in moments that aren't really.
That would be the healthy way to get there is transition, because another way to have Jaden McDaniels average more points would be to let him be a more primary part of like the half court offense. And the half court offense is largely Ant and Julius's. So if it isn't coming from transition or getting out on defense and some more stuff like that, I think there's a world where, I don't know, what do you think about this, Britt? Like more Jaden could come at the cost of some of your more bankable, effective, efficient offense from Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle. What's the danger?
A really tough sell.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it gets back. It was one of the reasons I kind of co-signed the 6-man idea, even though, I don't think it's quote unquote realistic, but
I mean, he's never going to get benched. He's never going to come off the bench.
I'm actually surprised to hear that percentage over 15 points, because what I remember about Jaden McDaniels is when he's shown as a power forward / center when Gobert and Randall were both out and they won 5 of 13 games. And I think he got over 15 in those games. So I think the way Jaden McDaniels scores is because he becomes a big man. He becomes a power forward who begins to box out and get putbacks and begins to cut to the basket, and they see him because he's a 4 instead of a 3. I think that the way that McDaniels becomes more a part of the offense is when he is noticed for doing something other than the dirty work, and players are like fans. They see something happening. I mean, Ann is the only one who religiously hits Jaden McDaniels when he's open, regardless. Mike Conley doesn't as much. Julius Randle doesn't as much. If Jaden is going to get 15, he's going to have to be in a different role. He is de facto the 4th or 5th option as a starter.
I think we're all saying the same thing. Don't call a lot more plays for him offensively at the cost of Anthony Edwards, right? But get more in transition, get more around the basket, offensive rebounds, those sort of things.
In the parlay of if he's off the ball a little more and he can grab a defensive rebound, then just go.
Yes. I think he's going to be one of the guys who actually does that.
Use his versatility.
Yep.
Jaden McDaniels is one of the largest playing people on the team. His wingspan is very large. He plays large when he gets to play in a large position. He is a legit power forward when he plays power forward. And when he and Nas were on the floor in February or January, whichever month it was, where they were the two guys out there, they frequently toggled between center and 4 back and forth. And they should have, because Jaden is as good at rim protection, if not better, than Nas is.
Absolutely. We could do another question. We'll keep running through. Look at that guy.
Appreciate you bringing that up, Britt. With Jaden McDaniels, I've been pounding the table, especially last year. Get him within 5 feet. His little jump stop hook shot or jump stop little fadeaway always goes in.
Yes.
Always goes in. I've never seen him miss. On the bench side of things, we've been hammering the table, of course, for Rob Dillingham to get more minutes in front of him. Seems like TJ is going to get a little more minutes. Obviously, Dante. Obviously, Nas. We want Rob to play, but then there's Jalen Clark right there. Seems like every time he plays, he makes a difference. He changes the entire complexion of the game at times, especially in preseason when we were down by how many? Came in, really flipped the script there. Where does he fit in all of this? Because he's always belonged. He's always belonged in the league.
We haven't been around this many Timberwolves fans in a while since last playoffs. So just a quick pulse of the nation, make some noise if you still believe in Rob Dillingham. Okay. Woo! Okay, that was Chris Finch levels. One more time. Do you believe in Rob Dillingham? Yes or no?
I ain't playing the rapper.
The Jalen Clark thing, we did our bold predictions thing, and this is last year. Jalen Clark was 9th in total minutes played. He was far ahead of Rob and TJ. You take Nikhil out this year, but it seems like everyone's just kind of plugging TJ back in. But I said that this year, one of my bold predictions was that Jalen would play top 8 in minutes. And you can kind of do the math in your head a little bit, but like every time Jalen Clark comes out, I feel like he just makes a bunch of winning plays. And as I told Dane last week, there's so many guys on this team, like the 8 starters mantra. I think Jalen Clark's the only guy on the roster right now in the rotation that's like, I'm a role player. Like he tells his girlfriend and his friends, like, I'm a role player. And I think that stuff is really important to winning basketball. So like, what is just your overall thought on Jalen Clark entering the regular season?
You can't talk about Jalen Clark without talking about Rob Dillingham, as the questioner properly contextualized it. If you're going to play a lot of Jalen Clark and you're giving Shannon the minutes it looks like he's going to get, Dillingham will suffer. So then the question becomes, you drafted this guy in the lottery, you gave up a pick in 2031 for him. He shows incredible flashes of brilliance and flashes of being extremely young and needing a lot of minutes. How do you give somebody who needs a lot of minutes when you are a 2-time Western Conference finalist, have a 33-year-old center getting huge money, getting Mike Conley a 38 ringer bust in the last year of his contract, and also, not for nothing, Julius Randle, Anthony Edwards, Dante DiVincenzo, Terrence Shannon. This team is relatively stacked, and that's why we're excited about it. If you want to be excited about Rob Dillingham, tell me who sits, because that's what it comes down to. What I say is, if you're going to go for it, and there should be no reason why they're not going for it, given their past history, then you make the hard basketball decision that Rob Dillingham gets the minutes he deserves. If he deserves a long leash, then he will prove it. Thus far, he has proven that he needs minutes, but the reason he needs minutes is because he's not currently up to the task.
What do you think about the idea of giving him minutes immediately the first 15, 20 games of the season, even though your theory is that Jalen Clark or Terrence Shannon Jr. playing them would more likely lead to wins? Because I am
define minutes.
Well, I think that's the question. Like, if you're giving Rob Dillingham 15 minutes a game as the ninth man, Jalen Clark will not play, or it will be.
I actually think
little.
15 minutes it begins to encroach.
On who?
Well, that's a good question. They had an solid 8 last year, and that means that 7 who were in that 8 last year would have to be shaved, and Shannon would have to be shaved. You're looking at 15 minutes. 15 minutes doesn't sound like a lot,
right?
But as Finch often says, we got 3 great big guys who are going to get 96 minutes, and that leaves, 6 guys competing for the other 3 positions. Well, Dillingham is one of those 6 guys, and the only way you get him good minutes is if you don't have Mike Conley on the court with him. And you also have, if you really want to develop him properly, you have Rudy Gobert and Anthony Edwards on the court with him. That's a huge ask for a team that needs to win every game in October and November, as well as January, February, and March.
My strong assumption is that they will give him a real opportunity. Rob Dillingham, at the beginning of the season, it will be the starting 5: Mike Conley, Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Julius Randle, and Rudy Gobert as your starting 5. Naz Reid will be the 6th man. Dante DiVincenzo will be the 7th man. Terrence Shannon Jr. will be the 8th man. Rob Dillingham will be the 9th man. And then your impulse is to say, and it might even be Chris Finch's impulse to say, try and mix Jalen Clark in there a little bit as the 10th. But I think what will happen is there will be a little splash of Jalen Clark, maybe here and there, so you can say they played 10 guys. But I would be willing to wager that Jalen Clark is not in that mix, because that is your top 9 to start the season. And then Rob Dillingham will have the opportunity in those 15 to 20 games to sink or swim. And we'll see. We don't know. Like, we don't know anything about
I could buy into that scenario, except for the fact that results in 15 minutes for Rob Dillingham. It doesn't. It results in 7 or 8.
As the night, I'm saying, I think Jalen Clark won't play. I think Rob Dillingham will.
Jalen Clark doesn't play. I do think it comes down to, I mean, we'll see. Obviously, I just don't feel like, first of all, I flat out look at Jalen Clark and the way he plays, and I look at Rob Dillingham and the way he plays. And I know that Chris Finch wants his playmaking to go as much through Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle as he does Mike Conley. And I say that one of those two guys will be on the floor, and Rob Dillingham is expected to play off ball as much as he's expected to play on ball, probably. And so I'm wondering why he's out there on a team that is going to be trying to be competing for a conference.
Because I agree. I would play Jalen Clark. I would not, if it was me, I would not play Rob Dillingham. If I wanted to win in Portland next Wednesday, I would not play Rob Dillingham.
And I think that's also true of Chris Finch. So it's going to be an interesting task.
I'm not sure it's all
fight.
I don't think it's all, I don't think it's all Chris Finch's call. I'm just saying. I think that's what it's.
I agree with that.
You have anything?
No mention of Johnny Juzang, but keep it moving.
Yeah. All right. Next question.
Hi guys. Huge fan of the show. Since we're talking about like assertive things here and talking about making hard claims, you all have been talking for the past really couple months in theory about X factors that you think may or may not impact the season. Dane believes how much the Wolves believes in transition will be the X factor. Kyle is praying to the temple of Johnny Juzang. Britt is believing in the development of TSJ or Jalen Clark, one of those two. So I want you all to make a definitive statement. What is the number one development that needs to happen in the name of continuity in order for the Wolves to make the NBA Finals?
I really do think it's as simple as how hard does Ant play? Like, I know that sounds so cliche, but like, if he just comes out in Portland and is just like, fuck it, I'm ready to level up. I've said all the right things, whatever. Like, and he locks some guy up on the first possession, and then he gets out in transition. Everyone that's here knows enough about him. That's like his.
Isn't that one game? I think like that's
right. But I want to see it in the first game, right?
Yeah,
and then I want to see it again on Friday in LA. And like, if we can say through the first 10 games, 9 of those nights,
okay, that's
he really brought it, and he brought it at the high. You know, like I'm more concerned about his floor than his ceiling, because his ceiling's limitless. But like, is he going to really bring it? Is he going to shut down Shaedon Sharpe and then get out in transition and get to his mid range? And he's going to have a shot in like late game stuff. I just think, again, how hard does he play? Because we talk so much about all this other stuff, and it is the cliche of like, I think he's just the straw that stirs the drink, and all those guys look up to him. I mean, you got guys that are older than him that look up to him. You got guys that are younger than him that clearly look up to him. And if he's like, I'm ready, I'm in the best shape, I had no, excuses this summer, that's what I'm looking for. Because all the other stuff, like Terrence could be great, and if Ant still half-asses it, on defense, none of it's going to really matter to me. They're going to still be a 51-win team that maybe makes the second round. It sounds really bad, but it's like, it's all about him. I think he raises Rudy's floor. How many times last season?
That'd be my answer too.
Yeah,
I don't know how there's any other answer that's more
it's just Ant bringing it at a different level every night.
Well, I mean, it's unanimous, but what I will say, it's a really trite answer, but it always needs to be said. They need to be healthy. This team needs to have the kind of injury luck that enables them to see what they have and run with it throughout the season. And every year there's like 2 out of 30 teams that have their season ruined. And it could be the Wolves. It could be OKC, as everybody's crossing their fingers about. But at the end of the day, it's going to be somebody. And if it's the Wolves, that's the biggest X factor.
I'm going to throw Rudy in there too. I just put that in there. Like a Rudy defensive season that's more like 2 years ago than last season. I think that's a kind of not talked about, almost ruled out sort of piece, because that's why that team. Yeah, that would help too. We can take another question.
Love the show, guys. What is, or do you think that the Timberwolves are going to be a player around the trade deadline? I know that we talk about having continuity and everything like that with this new team and having it for a year. Do you think that they make any trades at the trade deadline, or do you see anybody being a trade candidate or players in other teams that might be good on the Timberwolves?
Yeah, I mean, players specifically, no. I mean, I think so much of it with the deadline is going to be defined by what this team is in the first 4 months of the season, right? I think they kind of need to figure out what they might need. But Tim Connolly and the front office will absolutely be looking. But so many times, and this was the same thing kind of last year, right, at the deadline, or 2 years ago too, when you have all of this depth, like we're talking about, Britt and I are arm wrestling over Rob Dillingham or Jalen Clark. So you could suggest some player on, the Hornets or whatever that you think would be great. And I might like him too, but I go, well, where is he going to play? So I would assume the next meaningful trade probably looks kind of like the Cat Randall trade, where it's kind of one of the main guys swapped out for another similar caliber player. Does that happen at the deadline? No idea. But I don't think this is like a Adam Monte Morris on the margins type of team anymore, right? Like the margins are pretty well taken care of. Does this core of Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle, Rudy Gobert, Jaden McDaniels, and Naz Reid, like, if you're Tim Connolly, is that the way you want to move forward this year? And is that the way you want to move forward over the next 3 years?
Britt's back. Next question.
All right, guys. Long-time listener. Love you guys.
Thank you.
Cheers for these guys, man.
Yeah.
Let's go. All right.
Thank you.
Quick question here. Fourth quarter, 3 minutes left. We need scoring. A lot of times we have trouble scoring in the last 3 minutes of game. How do we solve that problem? A lot of talk has been about Finch has to script plays. I know Finch doesn't like scripting plays. Does he script the plays or not? And does Ant just step up and take over?
And do the players like to run plays is another portion of that did not always go well late in games last season. I mean, Brett, you and I talked about this a little bit on the last one. You want to take that piece?
Sure. Finch, one of the things he has said is that Ant needs a go-to move, a move that guarantees him both options and a reliable shot. He also says, parenthetically, that there are other ways to get through without Ant. He mentions the Conley-Rudy pick and roll, and he mentions Randall in the low block. I got to say, if those don't work on a pretty regular basis, Ant is going to take the reins back. And so I think the real priority here is Ant getting a go-to move. When I asked him in media day what his go-to move was, he says, I'm not saying, which means that he has one in mind, or he has something in mind. When we talked about it, I think it'll be a mid-range. I think it'll be either at the foul line or on the baseline. I think it will involve a play where he has footwork that enables him to pass if he's covered, or enables him to go up and under the slippery heel that I couldn't remember in the podcast that Kevin McHale always talked about.
That was the term, slippery heel?
Slippery heel.
I didn't know that.
McHale's slippery heel. Anyway, I think Ant will have a go-to move. I think Finch wants to see a go-to move. I think that there will be a pass option off the go-to move. And I think that it will be a mid-range jumper.
He asked the question, 3 minutes left, fourth quarter. I want to boil it down, 30 seconds, fourth quarter. You don't have to go too long on this, but for you, do you think it's better 30 seconds down to inbound the ball to him and make it automatic double, and now you have a power play with your other teammates, and does he trust it? Or to Britt's point, if he has this go-to move, is the answer to solve some of those clutch time woes, not putting the ball in his hand right away, getting some real action, which again, people aren't going to like this, but probably involves Mike Conley, and then getting him kind of, more of as a receiver rather than the quarterback.
Yeah, well, that's what we saw in the Oklahoma City series, right? Because, or frankly, a lot throughout the playoffs is if Ant has the ball at the top and he's initiating the offense, especially if there's a screen, he's going to get double teamed at the top there. And then to your point, it's about playing a power play behind that, right? Find Naz or Rudy or Julius on the roll there, and you play 4-on-3 on the backside. But that doesn't include Ant. So what their move was last year to make sure that Ant was taking that shot and not relying on the power play on the backside, which when Rudy's part of the power play, it's not that powerful, is kind of him starting the far corner and he peels over to the opposite wing and you're kind of feeding him in like the Carmelo Anthony range right there, right? And that's a tough place. It's a tough place to score efficiently, but it's a very difficult place to put a double team on him. So I think that's probably, to the 30 seconds left in the game question is, and they know that they want it to be Ant taking that. I think it's going to be initiated by Mike or Julius. Ant comes over off of a double screen and he's going to catch the ball in that spot. And if he can act quickly, he can take some sort of mid-range shot against single coverage there. But to the 3-minute point, I think you take the power play. You get the double team and you play 4-on-3, on the backside. But I think for that last second shot, it is not going to be like Michael Jordan in Utah just breaking it down and doing that. That's not how NBA they don't let you get to that anymore. You have to be a receiver to take a mid-range shot against single coverage, I think, in the modern NBA.
Two things. I think that Ant needs to have the ball with the game on the line. If he doesn't have the ball, the game on the line, it better fucking work. So that's one thing. How to do that
is another thing.
Well, no, I mean, I do think if you assume that Ant isn't going to be double teamed because somebody else catches the inbounds, I think smart coaches will camouflage an eventual double team on Ant and take their chances 4-on-3 with the rest. The other thing is Ant needs to move when he's off the ball in crunch time. If he has to give it up, he has gravity regardless of whether he's involved in the rest of the play. If two people follow him, then that is 4-on-3, and he's taken himself further away from the basket, which means 4-on-3 close to the basket. And then secondly, if he isn't being followed, that means he has a chance to work one-on-one in a situation where he's catching and shooting. So I would say make sure the ball lands in Ant's hands if you can. If it's a Conley, Gobert pick and roll, I mean,
we're ruling that out. We're ruling that out. I'm saying Mike is just initiating the offense so as to get the ball to Ant. That is a different thing than Ant initiating the offense with 30 seconds left on line, because that is a very easy thing as a defender to put two on him so as to get the ball out of his hands. If you want Ant with the ball in his hands and the clock is winding down, I think that is going to come from somebody else giving it to him so he's in a spot with single cup.
But the way this question started, how would Ant have a go-to move? I think any go-to move I'm imagining for Ant, Finch is imagining for Ant, and Ant is imagining for Ant is a double team anyway.
I don't think so. I think it's, agree to disagree. Right. Next.
Kind of jumping on the same vibe there. Offensively, I think we all see issues with our team. We don't run enough. We don't run a lot of good plays. Is that an issue with Finch not running complicated enough stuff, or is that our guys not running what he wants? And if that is the case, that it is Finch, do you see it being an issue where, because this season, there's a row where this goes bad for us this season. Are we looking at Finch at the end of the season like, is he our guy, or do we need to bring somebody in? Because everybody loves Finch, players loves Finch, but is he the type of guy that's going to call good enough plays to get us to win games and be in position to win games to make a run?
He is a low volume play caller as a coach, for sure. He called plays at the end of games. He always does that. What? I'm not sure. They call plays at the end of the game, and what was happening at end of games last season is it was getting blown up and players were going rogue. We asked him about that after the game. We asked Ant about that after the game, and Ant said, Finch told me to do this, and I didn't do it. So that's not Finch. I think if you want to levy critiques on Finch and play calling, it's more about through the course of the game, and he is less of a structured type coach. He likes to play reaction style basketball, and personally, that's not really my style, but that works too. It's just like a preference, it's like, do you like a cocktail or do you like a beer? They're just sort of different things. They both get the job done. But I think Finch a lot of the time takes the blame for there not being a play when he's coached an extremely young team that doesn't always run the play. So it's both. I would say it's both. I would like to see a heavy. I mean, look at Chicago as preseason game or whatever, but all the main guys played the first 6 minutes of the game. Terrible. There was no flow to the offense, and it wound up in Rudy's hands, and he was bricking a fadeaway 10-footer. What happened? They ran a play call. Jaden McDaniels brought the ball up. They ran a horn set, and they elevated Ant. Ant came off for a peel, and he found Jaden McDaniels in the corner, and Jaden attacked the basket, and he got a layup. That was a play call. Jaden initiated the offense. That's not a normal just getting into your thing. I would like in the course of the game there to be a lot more scripting from Finch, and I think that would be the more fair way to critique it, and not be like he doesn't call plays at the end of the games, because he calls plays at the end of the games, and I don't think they're simple.
We got to wake up because it's getting a little cold. Sometimes, to answer your question, sometimes my wife doesn't put the laundry in the dryer. I can't divorce her for that. We got to work on that. And we got to explain that one to the other. We transition wets to dries. With Chris Finch, I think there's some things this season. He doesn't have a blockbuster trade 48 hours for media day. He doesn't have to figure out this too big concept. He kind of has. He got to sit down with Britt Robson, the GOAT, do an hour and a half interview, and he's going to be able to stick to that now because there's no big trade. He's going to have to make some changes. I just get real nervous about, is he not the guy? And, the grass is greener syndrome when it's I think of this is a football thing, but, Mike Vrabel in Tennessee, it's they got rid of Mike Vrabel, and it went to shit. And the culture stuff is a lot of Ant, but, dude, it's a lot of Finch behind the scenes, too. So I just get tepid in, if he can't figure out this late game execution, it's all on him. Because it could be a lot worse. It needs to be better, but it could be a lot worse.
I can't follow, nor do I wish to disturb in any way that particular answer. I thought it was brilliant.
I don't know how many people.
Let's do two more with the appetizer for Crunch Wears No Pants.
Go ahead. Yeah. Just because I'm cold.
I'm freezing.
I'm cold too. I just want to thank you guys for giving great Wolves coverage.
Thank you.
You guys. Awesome. Anyway, this has all been a lot of serious questions. I just want to ask you guys, who, excluding Kevin Garnett, who is your first favorite Wolves player? And mine is Troy Hudson.
T. Hud.
And if you want to give a little blurb about why or why not, Troy Hudson had dreads, made a lot of threes, so I loved him.
I'm actually interested in what your answer is, Britt.
Yeah.
Well, describe favorite.
You describe favorite.
Who's your favorite player you've got to interact with, locker room setting, whatever?
There's so many different criteria. What I would say is Kevin Garnett first in almost everything. Okay, then Gorgie Jang was an amazing human being.
I like how
the dude that
Gorgie Jang got the biggest applause.
Poured most of his salary
Your
into
name.
his people in Africa. In the middle of the locker room while everybody's getting interviewed and people are naked walking around and everything like that, he lays out his little white towel and he prays to Mecca from the side. Doesn't say a word about it, isn't proselytizing.
They can't hear you if you don't do the microphone. Got to do the microphone.
Just following his faith and belief in as quiet a way as possible. It just so happens that he couldn't do it on the sideline, so he has to do it in the locker room after the game. When Karl Anthony Towns was having excuses made for him on the way he played defense, Gorgie said, I don't understand this. I play defense better than Cat, and I do these things that should be done, and Cat isn't doing them. I love him for all three of those things. So that is definitely a guy. Taj Gibson is one of the most stand-up. The guy would never fail to answer a question and usually was incredibly intelligent about it. Told you his biases. He loved Butler, but when Butler blew up the team, he said, I can't get behind that. I thought that was a really cool and brave thing to do when he's a friend of yours and a longtime teammate. And then there's 50 others, but we don't have the time.
Well, just a quick follow-up on your question. I would ask you what you think of Gorgie Jang, but I think you're not allowed to keep his name in your mouth. So back to you. If you know, you know. Who's someone you didn't like interacting with?
Wally Zerbiak.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay, we need 30 seconds quick. Explain. Give me one anecdote. What made him a difficult human?
the fact that he was like a robot. You know, you pull a string and he spew cliches, and also trying to. He was so press savvy that he sabotaged himself. He was so blatant in terms of the way he tried to give the media what they wanted without giving the media jack shit. It was just such a it was an unimaginative performance pretty consistently.
Good
No?
answer. No, who's my favorite player? Well, anytime any favorite Timberwolves player, I always go back to Andrei Kirilenko, just because I thought he was going to be awesome here. Like, can you imagine a modern day Andrei Kirilenko, like in 2025? He would be a max player.
This makes a lot of sense with your Jaden McDaniels love.
Yeah, I love tall guys. Next question.
Mine's Jared Vanderbilt.
So
Yeah,
it's
no
kind of
room for Dane.
kind of a Nikhil question.
Weird thing is that's actually my honest answer. I don't think I was his favorite media person, but
With Nikhil's departure, we kind of talk about how we're going to essentially have his role be split in the aggregate between the three younger players. But we've kind of also talked about how they might not all see the court on a regular basis. So where do you guys feel is where the Wolves are going to miss Nikhil's absence the most? You know, assuming it's not the most optimistic viewpoint of it.
January 12th, when it's 32 below outside. Like, I think he was on the Rudy Gobert spectrum of he brought it every night. I think in the locker room, again, this is like, you're not there. So I'm just trying to give you what I know. Like, in the locker room, he was such a good person for young players to talk to, for vets to kind of hang out with. I mean, you guys were there way more than I was, but like, I loved how much Nikhil loved reading books. I know that sounds nerdy, but like, he was just an old soul in a locker room, and those locker rooms have a lot of dynamics because they're all making combined close to $1 billion. Like, I think they're going to just miss his personality behind the scenes. And then the fact that every night he might miss a sidestep three, he might miss an assignment, but he brought it. And I think who's going to fill that with these younger guys of like, who's going to bring it every single night?
Dane, I think you ought to take this. You have a soft spot for Nah, and you really appreciated him.
yeah, I mean, I just think there's like a ton of power in like 48 minutes of like elite on-ball presence, which they had in Jaden and Nikhil. Like, and Nikhil was always in if Jaden was out. And it's kind of why I'm on the. I see the Rob Dillingham piece of it, and I think the team needs that. But part of my Jalen Clark rationale is this team was the #1 defense 2 years ago because of ball containment. And I think it was the #6 defense last year because they still had elite ball containment and they had some other holes. But to me, in today's NBA, especially as the pace increases, it is very important to be able to present resistance and make teams play in the half court. And I think having both Nikhil and Jaden to do that was wildly like low key important for this team. So that's part of my Jalen Clark rationale, but I don't even know if he's going to be able to do the same stuff that he did. Maybe Terrence Shannon Jr. can, but if they can't, they're going to miss that.
I think it comes down to his faith. I am an anti-religious guy. I don't believe in organized religion. I went to church. My mother.
Both of your cheers were Gorgie Jag because he prayed, and
my mother let me eat the wafer once because, well, you're stepping on my line.
Yeah, my bad.
So, on the other hand, faith goes beyond religion. When I see somebody like Gorgie do what he does, when I see Nikhil justifying his clarification of his role and his ability to suddenly have self-confidence in himself at a time when he previously didn't, and quotes a Bible verse or says something about religion, that's real faith. That's something real. And I think if you have somebody who is real in the locker room and is also your eighth man who has the best plus minus on the team, people notice that in that locker room. And he'll be missed in the locker room more than he'll be missed on the court. And he was damn good on the court.
I think we got some rain coming in. That's a good way to close it. We have Dan Herman, who is the owner of
Herman.
Falling Knife. None of this happens. None of anything happens in the playoffs without like Dan and his team's vision for this. Yeah, Dan.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you everybody for coming out. This is really like moving that we have created this community culture. There was a thing earlier on Twitter where somebody was like, I'm going to WolvesFest solo. Like, you're never going solo. There's a pack here. We're all here. We all spend the time in the basement watching shit fucking teams doing this. Sorry. Not safe for work stuff. It'd be really remiss. I was talking with Paul Backer over here. If you haven't ever gone to Toma, go to Toma. But we were feeling like something was really off, and we just want to acknowledge the fact that Tom Berg is not here. Tom, who is my business partner, my brother, all that. He passed in May or in April, and we did the party in May, and he was the guy that was always at bar 4. So if you ever hear, and he was wearing a Nasri jersey and enjoying the game and would talk to you about things and then give away too much beer. But that's my thing. I'm revenue generation. We're going to try to do some cool things still. You know, we're going to do more live pods this year. We're going to do all the watch games. We're staying open for everything. And we're going to do that scoreboard social stuff every game. So if you come out here, you get to pick how you think the game's going to go. And we're going to do prizes every time. You got to stay through the end of it. But we're going to do some really, really cool stuff this year for games. We're going to continue to grow this and continue to grow the community. And we're just grateful that you choose Falling Knife as a place to come share your fandom. So don't leave. Crunch Wears No Pants is doing a pod after this. So they're the main act, and we just go from there.
Hey, one more time for Falling Knife and Dan Herman.
Thank you all for coming out. We're going to hang out for a while, and the Crunch Wears No Pants crew is going to be inside doing their pod. We love you, and shout out Tom Berg.